Every morning, the boy woke up before the sun. The small room was still dark, except for the faint light slipping through the cracked window. His mother was already awake, sitting on the floor, sorting the few fruits she would sell that day. Apples with small bruises, bananas turning yellow too fast. Life had taught her how to survive with little. The boy quietly washed his face, put on his faded school uniform, and picked up his old torn backpack. Before leaving, his mother placed an apple in his bag. "Eat this during break," she said softly. He nodded and smiled, a smile that tried hard to hide tiredness. The walk to school was long. Other children passed him wearing clean uniforms, laughing loudly, their bags heavy with books and lunchboxes. He walked alone, his steps calm but his heart heavy. Still, he never complained. To him, school was not just a place of fear, it was also a place of hope. Inside the classroom, the walls were cracked, the benches broken. The teacher entered with a stern face and a stick in his hand. The boy lowered his eyes. He knew what was coming. When the teacher asked questions, the boy raised his hand slowly. His voice trembled as he answered. He knew the lesson, but fear made the words shake. "You're wrong," the teacher shouted. Before the boy could explain, the stick came down hard on his hands. The class went silent. The boy bit his lip. He did not cry. He had learned long ago that tears only made things worse. He returned to his seat, hands burning, eyes fixed on the book. Inside, something hurt more than the pain, the feeling of being unseen. During break time, while other children shared snacks, the boy opened his bag and took out the apple his mother had given him. He wiped it on his shirt and took small bites, saving half for later. That apple carried more than taste, it carried his mother's love. When school ended, he walked home slowly. Each step felt heavier than the morning. He rehearsed his answer in his mind, knowing his mother would ask the same question she asked every day. At home, his mother looked up from her empty fruit basket. "How was school today, my son?" she asked gently. "It was good, Ami," he replied quickly, forcing a smile. She looked at his hands. She saw the marks. A mother's eyes never miss such things. Her heart ached, but she said nothing. She knew her child's silence was not weakness, it was patience. That night, she counted the few coins she had earned. Not enough, but she smiled anyway. "Tomorrow will be better," she whispered, more to herself than to him. The boy lay on the floor beside her, staring at the ceiling. His hands still hurt, but his dreams were alive. He dreamed of a day when learning would not hurt, when teachers would understand, and when his mother would not have to sell fruit on the streets. He closed his eyes, holding on to one truth. No matter how hard life became, he would not give up. The next morning began just like every other. The boy woke up early, his hands still sore from the day before. He tried to stretch his fingers, but a sharp pain ran through them. He clenched his teeth and stayed quiet. Complaints had never changed anything. His mother watched him carefully as she prepared her small fruit basket. She noticed the way he avoided using his hands, the way his smile faded quickly. "Eat well today," she said, placing 2 bananas into his bag instead of 1. He looked at her, surprised. "You need strength," she added, gently touching his head. On the way to school, the boy's mind was restless. He loved learning, but fear followed him into the classroom like a shadow. Still, he promised himself he would try harder today. In class, the teacher was already angry. The room felt tense. Chalk dust floated in the air as lessons continued. The boy focused deeply, repeating the answers silently in his head. When his name was called, his heart began to race. He stood up slowly and answered correctly. For a brief moment, hope flickered inside him. But the teacher frowned. "Speak louder," he snapped. The boy tried again, his voice trembling. The teacher misunderstood his fear for arrogance. The stick came down again. This time, a quiet gasp escaped the classroom. A few students looked away. Others watched in silence, unsure, afraid. The boy returned to his seat, his face pale, his hands shaking. At lunch, he did not eat. The bananas stayed untouched in his bag. After school, his steps dragged more than usual. When he reached home, his mother was sitting on the floor counting coins again. She looked up and smiled, but the smile faded when she saw his face. She held his hands gently. The marks were darker now. "Who did this?" she asked softly. The boy looked down. "It doesn't matter, Ami," he said. "But it does," she whispered. Tears filled her eyes, but she wiped them quickly. She did not want her child to see her breaking. "Why don't you tell the truth?" she asked. "Because if I stop going to school, he replied quietly. Then all your hard work will be wasted. Her heart shattered in silence. The next day, something unexpected happened. A well-dressed man visited the school. He walked through the corridors slowly, observing everything, the broken benches, the tired faces, the strict silence. He stopped near the boy's classroom. During the lesson, he noticed the boy's bruised hands. He noticed how the boy flinched whenever the teacher moved. Experience told him this was not discipline, it was cruelty. After class, the man called the boy aside. "Does it hurt?" he asked gently. The boy hesitated, then nodded. That was enough. The man called the teacher into the office. His voice was calm but firm. "Do you know this child's life outside this classroom?" he asked. "Does it hurt?" he asked gently. The boy hesitated, then nodded. That was enough. The man called the teacher into the office. His voice was calm but firm. "Do you know this child's life outside this classroom?" he asked. The teacher stayed silent. "He walks miles to school. His mother sells fruit on the streets to feed him. He comes hungry, scared, and still eager to learn," the man continued. "And you meet that courage with a stick?" For the first time, the teacher had no answer. That evening, the man visited the boy's home. He saw the empty basket, the cracked walls, and the tired mother who still stood with dignity. Now everything was clear. This child wasn't weak. He was brave. And soon, things were about to change. The following day felt different before it even began. The boy walked to school with the same old backpack on his shoulders. But something unseen walked beside him now. Hope. He didn't fully understand what the visitor's words would change. But for the first time, he felt that someone had noticed him. In the classroom, the air was heavy with uncertainty. The teacher entered without the stick in his hand. His steps were slower, his face less severe. The students sensed the shift but said nothing. The lesson began. The boy listened carefully, his eyes fixed on the board. When a question was asked, he hesitated. Fear still lived inside him, but it was weaker now. Slowly, he raised his hand. The teacher looked at him. For a moment, the room stood still. "Yes?" the teacher said without shouting. The boy answered. His voice shook, but his answer was correct. The teacher nodded and turned back to the board. No anger, no punishment. The boy felt something warm rise in his chest. It wasn't pride. It was relief. Later that day, the visitor returned, this time officially. He stood in front of the class and introduced himself as a school inspector. His eyes moved across the room and rested briefly on the boy. After class, he called the teacher into the staff room. "I was once a student like him," the inspector said quietly. "Poor, afraid, silent. One kind teacher changed my life. One cruel one almost ended it." The teacher looked down. His hands trembled slightly. "I thought discipline made strong students," the teacher said. "I didn't know his story." "That is the problem," the inspector replied. "You never asked." That evening, the inspector returned to the boy's home, this time with the teacher. The mother froze when she saw them standing at her door. Fear rushed through her. Had her son done something wrong? She pulled him close instinctively. "There is no trouble," the inspector said gently. "We came to talk." The teacher looked around the small room, the empty basket, the cracked walls, the thin mattress on the floor. He saw the life his student returned to every day. His voice broke. His voice broke. "I am sorry," he said, bowing his head. "I hurt your son without knowing his pain." The mother was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice calm but firm. "My son is not weak," she said. "He studies with pain because he believes education will save him. Please don't take that belief away." The teacher nodded, tears in his eyes. "I promise," he said. "From now on, I will teach him with respect." The boy watched quietly. He didn't fully understand apologies or promises, but he understood change. Days passed. The classroom slowly transformed. The teacher explained lessons instead of shouting. He asked questions instead of raising his hand. Other students noticed and began to speak without fear. The boy started sitting straighter. He began finishing his work faster. His hands healed, but something deeper healed too, his confidence. One afternoon, the teacher called him to the front of the class. "Read this," he said gently. The boy read clearly. His voice no longer shook. The class clapped. That night, the boy came home smiling. "How was school?" his mother asked, as always. He paused. This time, he said, it was truly good. She smiled, her eyes shining with quiet tears. But life was still hard. The fruit basket was still light. Money was still scarce. Yet something powerful had changed. The boy had learned that suffering did not define him, and the teacher had learned that power without understanding only creates fear. The hardest days were not over yet, but the boy was no longer walking alone. The boy continued going to school every day, just as he always had. His uniform was still faded, his shoes still worn, and his backpack still old, but the weight he carried inside his heart was lighter now. Fear no longer controlled his steps. At home, nothing had magically changed. His mother still woke up before sunrise, arranging fruit in her basket with careful hands. Some days she sold enough, some days she didn't, yet her spirit never bent. One evening, the boy watched her quietly as she returned home tired. Her feet sore, her basket almost empty. "Ami," he said softly, "when I grow up, you won't have to sell fruit anymore." She smiled and placed her hand on his head. "My son," she said, "if you grow into a good human being, that will be enough." At school, the teacher kept his promise. He began staying after class to help students who struggled. When the boy made mistakes, the teacher corrected him patiently. Slowly, trust replaced fear. One day, the inspector visited again. This time, he came with good news. The boy had been selected for a small scholarship, just enough to cover books and fees. When the teacher told him, the boy stood frozen. "For me?" he asked, barely believing it. "Yes," the teacher said, smiling. "For your hard work." That evening, when the boy told his mother, she covered her mouth with her hands and cried, not from sadness, but from relief. Years of silent prayers finally felt heard. The next morning, the boy went to school holding his head a little higher. Months passed. Exams came and went. The boy ranked among the top students. Other children began asking him for help, the same children who once watched him suffer in silence. The teacher often watched him from across the room, guilt still resting in his heart, but also pride. One afternoon, the teacher asked the boy to stay after class. "I want to tell you something," he said. "You taught me a lesson I should have learned long ago." The boy listened quietly. "I thought fear made students strong," the teacher continued. "But you showed me that kindness creates strength." The boy smiled, not proudly but gratefully. Years later, the fruit basket disappeared from the streets. The boy grew into a young man, educated, confident, and humble. His mother no longer worked under the burning sun. Her hands rested now, her face peaceful. One day, the young man returned to his old school, not as a student, but as a guest speaker. The classrooms were repaired, the benches replaced, the walls painted. The teacher sat in the front row, older now, quieter. When the young man stood at the podium, he looked around the room and spoke calmly. "There was a time when coming to school hurt," he said. "But I never stopped coming because my mother believed in me, and because someone finally chose understanding over punishment." His eyes met his former teacher's. "And that choice," he continued, "changed everything." The room fell silent. After the speech, the teacher approached him with trembling hands. "I am proud of you," the teacher said. "So am I," the young man replied softly. "We both learned." Outside, the mother waited. As they walked home together, the young man realized something powerful. He had never won by fighting. He had won by not giving up. Not when he was beaten. Not when he was poor. Not when the world was unfair. Because true strength was never about power. It was about patience, hope, and a heart that refused to surrender.